Hello and welcome back to our show. In order for us to make the change that we want to see in this world, we have to be educated and active. On the Hagir show, we are trying to do our part to raise awareness about different social issues. And today we have Nigel and Kevin, Nigel from the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project, founded in 1992 to exonerate the wrongfully convicted through DNA testing and reform the criminal justice system to prevent future injustices. And without further ado, I will have Nigel introduce himself to you guys, and we can get started. Hello, Nigel.
Hey, good afternoon, Hagir. Thank you for having me today. I'm Nigel Quiroz. I'm a policy analyst at the Innocence Project. Like you said, our mission is to free wrongfully convicted people through DNA testing and reform the system to reveal and prevent future wrongful convictions. As a policy analyst, I work to help the team to help research any legal issues that might come up with our policy agenda. So I've been doing that for about 3 years now. So the Innocence Project was founded in 1992 by Peter Neufeld and Barry Scheck at Cardozo School of Law here in New York City. And it just started as a law clinic with some law students who helped Barry and Peter to help exonerate people. And we've been our own our own nonprofit since about 2004. So to this day, there's been about 367 post-conviction DNA exonerations. The Innocence Project has been involved in about 220 of them. And those have occurred in about 37 states. And out of all those exonerations, 20 of those people were sentenced to death at some point of their trials.
Wow.
So as you can see, like, these people were actually set to die until they were exonerated. So out of those, about 160 of the true perpetrators were identified. So you can see how that goes into public safety. A lot of times when a person is wrongfully convicted, the person who actually committed the crime may go on to commit other crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a very, very dangerous situation. We see that about our clients spend about an average of 14 years in prison. On average, they go in at about the age of 26 and out of the age of the age of 42. The racial disparity is great. It's about 70% Black and brown people and about 30% white. So you can see how that goes, how that kind of mimics the criminal justice system currently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's predominantly Black and brown. So we see that there are many causes of wrongful convictions. One cause is eyewitness misidentification. That occurs in about 69% of our cases. A lot of times eyewitness identification is kind of faulty, especially across racial lines. If you have a suspect who's of another race and a victim who's of another race, it's kind of faulty in the identification of them. So we push for eyewitness identification reforms in order to correct that. So one of the reforms we put in our core 4 reforms, which is like the blinded administration of lineups. So the police officer who's conducting the lineup doesn't know who the suspect is, so they don't try to lead into identifying who they think the suspect is. We have many examples of this. One example is Cornelius Dupree. He was exonerated in 2011 after spending more than 30 years in prison for rape and a robbery that he didn't commit, and he was mistakenly identified in a photo lineup by a victim of the rape and robbery. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another cause that we see is the misapplication of forensic science. That can be seen in our Netflix show, The Innocence Files. A few of our cases had to deal with faulty bite mark evidence. Bite mark evidence was used in the 80s and the 90s to convict people, and we now know that they're not. That's not a validated scientific a validated scientific process. So that has caused a few wrongful convictions also. So we just hope to try to regulate some sort of uniform forensic sciences and help validate forensic sciences in order to be used. Another thing we see is false confessions or admissions. That occurs in about 30% of our wrongful convictions. A main example of that is the exonerated 5, previously known as the Central Park 5. They were 5 young African American and Hispanic teens who falsely confessed to a crime because they were being interrogated for many hours, over a day, without lawyers and without parents present. Mm-hmm. So that happens in about 30% of our wrongful convictions that we see. One reform that we push for that is the recording of interrogations from the start to finish. In the exonerated 5 case, they just recorded the confession. They didn't record what led into the confession, what the officers said to kind of probe these confessions out of these kids. So we just push for the mandatory recording of all the interrogations from start to finish.
Okay.
So that's a big thing also. We also push for the regulation of jailhouse informants. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people are convicted in about 17% of our cases by incentivized informants. Sometimes there's a person in a jail who says that they have some information in order to get leniency on their cases or other preferable treatment, and they will actually falsely accuse a person in the jail of committing a crime. So that goes into some of our wrongful convictions also. So we just push for the regulation of that. So so that's a little bit of the history of the Innocence Project and the factors that go into wrongful convictions. In
a nutshell.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I said in a nutshell. So we will dive into all those issues one by one in the next hour. If you allow me, I'm just going to play the trailer and ask people to go ahead and watch the documentary and learn what is happening actually and what the Innocence Project.
I am serving a 40 to 60 year sentence. As God is my witness, I am not guilty.
We get flooded with letters from all over the country. There were human beings who were claiming to be wrongly convicted.
We realized that there were so many things wrong with the system. So we started the Innocence Project. The oath is to seek justice. For some people, justice has meant maximizing charges, years, and convictions.
20 years? My brother thought nobody's going to hear me. It's like the coffin is closed.
In this case, no DNA, no fingerprints, no gunshot residue.
I became outraged at how thin the evidence was.
20 years passed after I was convicted.
Almost 20 years, and it's more than half of my life.
Unfortunately, the mentality among too many judges, too many district attorneys, is justifying means.
If they're going to double bind, the proof that I didn't commit this crime.
They withheld evidence on purpose, get a conviction, period.
If we find that the client is innocent, we don't stop until we win.
I never thought this was complicated.
It's coming. It's coming home.
I went to prison at the age of 18. I ain't see the streets until the age of 46.
When I got out of jail, I took my shoes off and just walked around New York. 12 years, I haven't touched no grass.
I wonder what would have happened if my incarceration wouldn't be part of my story.
I wouldn't do this job if I didn't think it could be fixed.
I wanted to know there was someone out there that was fighting for them.
I think the best thing that a lawyer can do with their license is get an innocent guy out of prison.
And And that's, guys, the Innocence File. It is on Netflix, and it is actually a true story. And I know so many of us watch many movies, and some of them are not real, but for the most majority, they're stories that did happen actually. So do you, if you don't mind, if you can explain the process, what is the cause, the actual cause? I know you don't have 100% answer for this, but what the cause for a wrongful conviction, if we can answer this?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, there are many causes that go into wrongful convictions, and they might sometimes there's not just one cause. It might be a factor of multiple different causes. So you might have a case with eyewitness misidentification and a false confession or admission, or any type of combination of any of these causes. You might have some with inadequate representation, prosecutorial misconduct. All those factors go into creating a wrongful conviction. So there's not just one singular cause. There are many different causes that might go hand in hand to create a wrongful conviction. Yeah.
And one other thing that the documentary or the trailer for the documentary talked about is piling up the evidence and trying to prove your case. And that's not how it's supposed to work. I mean, you cannot just have someone in mind say, this person fits the description, so I'm going to have to go and find evidence. And unfortunately, this is how most of the system works, and so many people don't understand. It makes you lose trust in our justice system, and that's what you guys are trying to do. Not just exonerating, but law changing, policy changing. If you can talk to us a little bit about what the work that you do with policy making and what can we do.
Okay.
Yeah,
definitely. So what we push our policy reform. So like you said, with evidence, actually getting access to DNA testing. Currently, 50 states have passed bills in order to get access to DNA testing, but they're all not created equal. So we go and we try to reform and fix these that it's easier to get DNA testing. A lot of these cases are pretty old, decades old. So DNA might not have been tested, but that evidence still exists. So we need to have a mechanism in order to get back into court to test this evidence in order to prove somebody to be innocent. So we've passed reforms in 31 states to preserve this evidence. So that goes hand in hand with the testing. So we need to have evidence be available to be tested. So we spoke a little bit earlier about the false confessions and the recording of interrogations. So we've passed reforms in 27 states in the District of Columbia in order to get recording of interrogations in those states and in places. So that just goes hand in hand to protect the next person who might have falsely confessed, because we have some sort of record for it. So all 50 states don't have it, so we're continuing to push. Also, with our eyewitness identification method, we have 25 states that do that now. So it's half. So we have to push to get all 50 states in order to further prevent these things from happening on the front end as opposed to the back end.
And at this point, I would like to introduce Kevin. He's a fighter, an activist. He's the CEO of the Voice for the Voiceless, and one of our own here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Kevin, can you introduce yourself so you will be able to join us in this discussion and make it rich?
Thank you. Nice to meet both of you. My name is Kevin Maxson, and I'm the CEO of Voices for the Voiceless, which is actually a grassroots organization that's designed to apply pressure when injustices or oppressive-based experiences occur. A lot of things that transpire in the Dauphin County prison system often end in brutality, unlawful detention, and or death in some cases. the one case that started me out in my pursuit to combat injustice was the Tyreek Riley case. He was unlawfully detained and taken into custody and charged with a crime that never transpired.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, he succumbed to death, where he was brutally beaten and killed by correctional officers. And this whole scenario and situation was swept under the rug until I was contacted by his family, and they asked me to stand up and be a voice for him. And that's how I got the name of my organization, as Voices for the Voiceless. I started becoming vocal. I started contacting the news and media. I organized protests outside the prison until I made enough noise and drew enough attention for them to actually do something as far as Tyreek Riley's death was concerned. And even today, people succumb to brutality, unlawful detention, coerced into taking plea bargains, and brutalized in the Dauphin County prison system. And enough, little to anything is done by the way of policy, litigation, and our political leaders. They actually turned a blind eye to the injustices in this construct. So even now, I host rallies and protests during this COVID-19 pandemic. They're at a crisis level in this prison, and they're not receiving the proper medical attention. Their families aren't getting the information necessary. They're taking people who are new to the system and placing them in cells with people infected by COVID, and it just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. The whole prison, for lack of better words, is created in a cruel and unusual punishment standard. The DAs pressure you to take pleas, and if you don't, they hold you there in pre-sentence confinement past the 365-day standard to get into a trial. And they put you in a hole. The guards brutalize you. They starve you. They refuse you visits and mail. And I'm only saying this because I've experienced this myself in that system. They put me in a hole for 11 months for nothing. They denied me visits. They denied me food. They tortured me, for lack of better words. And also, they denied me the opportunity to go to my son's funeral, who passed away by his mom, who actually smothered him to death because she was using drugs while I was in prison, and she was suffering from postpartum depression. And they did that to make me suffer, to make me cop out to a plea deal, because I was fighting. I was actually representing myself at that particular point, because the public defender's office does not protect you. They don't care about your best interests. They quickly push you to a plea deal, even if it's beyond what you should be serving time for. And ultimately, it's a system of systemic racism and bias and total corruption. And that goes up to the highest levels. And the only real platform that I have to fight is being vocal about it, organized marches, contacting political figures and bringing them on board about issues. And there hasn't been a real turn in that system. That system needs broken down and rebuilt.
Yeah.
It's totally corrupt, and it's based on a slavery standard, and that's how they treat the males and females in there. There's even cases where females, their cells have been entered and they've been bound, raped, impregnated, and forced into abortions. There's guards taking drugs and stuff in and out the facility, exchanging it for sexual favors with the female guards. And they also give people who are starving, because they won't feed you for days. They'll make you starve until they can manipulate you into doing what they want you to do. And people are actually exchanging favors for food. They'll make another inmate attack or brutalize another inmate for some food. And these are the things that go on in Dauphin County Prison. And they're all aware of it, but they neglect to change it.
And you know what, Kevin? A lot of people hear this and think of just, oh, this is a show, or see some shows like Orange is the New Black, or some of the shows that talk about brutality, about issues that actually happen in our prison system, and think it is not true. It doesn't happen. And this is just to show we need to educate ourselves. And all information we bring here to you, or you learn from any social media, go research, do your own research and look and find the statistics, the facts, things that to back up what you're saying. And Kevin is just one person. He's trying to fight, and he was able to get out and use his voice to do such a good job on representing and advocating for others. Same with, the Innocence Project. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, Kevin.
Yes, everybody knows about the Innocence Project. Everybody knows about the beautiful work they do, and everybody is proud of the Innocent Project and what they do and how they contribute to society.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I know who have found freedom through the Innocent Project. So I take my hat off to them, and I'm extremely supportive of everything they do.
And I think that question is for you, Kevin, or Nigel. You can talk about other cases, and specifically now they're asking about Amber Borelli. She's asking about the overcrowding in Dauphin County Prison. She said, can you talk about that?
Well, with Dauphin County Prison, they actually has the bed capacity to only house 700 inmates at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, they're above 1,200 inmates. They actually have inmates sleeping on the floor. They serve their meals inside their cells next to toilets. They don't have a cafeteria. It's just so many countless issues that's going on with this prison. They have rodent and bug infestation. People contract MRSA regularly in there. They're understaffed, but they continuously overcrowd this prison to generate money. And that's all it's actually about. You got people sleeping in day rooms, sleeping in hallways, sleeping on the floor, and there's rats and mice and everything running around. When I was in Dauphin County Prison, you actually had to tie your commissary bag up on the bunk because there was so many rodents in there. They actually jump in your bag and eat your food and leave fecal matter in there. It's just half the time they don't have cool air and they don't have heat in the winter. Right now, they turned the heat off on the water and got inmates taking cold showers to deter them from wanting to shower due to the COVID outbreak. So everything that's transpiring in there is nothing short of cruel and unusual punishment. And they continuously brutalize males and females in this prison system, deny them medical attention. They will beat you up, drag you to the hole, put you in solitary, put you in a chair, and beat you for days and leave you there, and you won't have no family contact. Half the time, the family can't even reach out to their family members because the guards have done something to them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guards are fueled by racism and bigotry, and they let you know that. So this system is corrupt.
Goes well with all other. I mean, we're going to talk again. There's few questions for you, Kevin. We'll go back to that and have you talk more about it. But now I wanted to direct it back to Nigel. Nigel, this is such a big topic. We can, like I said, discuss one situation in one prison and apply it to the states. And the problem is not just the mistreatment, but the whole system. And I know a lot of people watching now, they might think, okay, those are felons. But this is not the case we were talking about. This is not the case for Kevin now. It is not the case for the 2,600 number Nigel just gave for the people they were able to help in the Innocence Project. Can you explain, why are we talking about this now?
Okay.
Prison system when someone is going to say they're felons.
So I believe your question is just about the criminal justice system in general.
Yes.
So it's many different factors. We have issues like in New York, we just recently passed the bill to pull 58, to reform 58, which is a labor law that helped police officers shield their disciplinary records. So there was really no accountability. So a police officer could commit X number of infractions and you never know. And the statistics just show like that's many states have that. So New York isn't the only state that has it, and thank goodness we were able to get that repealed. Now with the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, there has been, this is like a time of catalyst that a lot of people are just looking and demanding answers, like why are things the way that they are? What can we do to help? So a lot of it has to go into accountability. Like I said, the disciplinary records, the use of force records, use of force policies in different states, what's legal for a cop to do, what a cop can do to use deadly force. Those things are all over the place in different states. So that's just things that we're looking into reform, and also qualified immunity. Police officers have qualified immunity, so they cannot be sued for any police brutality that they have. So they're not being able to be held accountable. So Colorado just passed a law last week that ended qualified immunity for police officers. So now police departments are being held accountable financially for misconduct that police do. So all these things are on the front end, and they help usher people into the criminal justice system. And once you start at the beginning, you see some changes downstream.
What do you have to say about that, Kevin?
I think that's a good start in some of the issues that affect us as a whole. We got to start somewhere, and the key factor in any change is policy. And where they're attacking policy, that rolls downhill, and it also affects how law enforcement conduct themselves, how correctional officers conduct themselves, how probation and parole conduct themselves, and so on and so forth. But the key factor is changing the policies in which that protect them and keep them in a mechanism to infringe upon people's rights collectively.
Mm-hmm. And when we talked like earlier, I know, Nigel, you discussed some of the statistics. When you compare this, I mean, if you say to me there is 2,500 Black or different race are incarcerated more than white, to me, this would not make any sense if I don't know the exact amount of, say, for example, Black people here in the United States, if we call them, I mean, this is what, I don't like the term, but this is what people relate to now and understand what we're exactly talking about. We are, what, 13% of the population? And you have 60 or 70% of this population incarcerated.
Yes. So we're over.
Yeah.
We're over incarcerated and over policed. So that is not. Yeah, that's not like, if you look at the statistics, you're only 13% of the actual population, and we're incarcerated at 60%. I can't remember the exact statistic, but yes, correct.
So and that note, when we compare, we cannot. It won't be fair to compare if you have a large group of people and you say, for example, incarcerated 50% of 100. It is not the same like when you say, oh, well, this is 50% of the Black people population. But when you look at the number as 5,100 out of how many, this will give people an understanding. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear. I know we don't have any picture to show, and so people can really see this is affecting, and it's not just affecting everyone equal, or we won't be discussing this, and it will explain why people are out rallying and protesting now. It is not just because of the deaths of George Floyd. It's the whole system, and starting like what Kevin said, the prison system is part of the slavery. And I know I refer to the documentary 13, and I wanted everyone that listening to us today, if they did not watch this, they can go and watch the documentary 13. It's free on Netflix, and it's on YouTube also. But it gives you understanding on the start of the police system, the policing, the prison, all of that. And with the laws that we're starting to pass now, what can we do? And I know that I asked earlier, but what can we do? What people like me can do to help the Innocence Project and to help reforming laws and regulations?
Okay, definitely. So when, like, we spoke about policy and how that helps in changing the system, These decisions are all made by lawmakers. Nothing moves a lawmaker more than hearing from their constituent. So if we have something going on, if we have a reform that we want to push, and we can have you call your state senator and tell them specifically, like, I live here, I vote for you every day. I want you to vote for this because it affects my community, so and so and so way. That goes beyond. So with 50A, that was something that was being tried to be pushed for the last 8 years. It passed literally 2 weeks just because of the outcry from everyone who wanted this law repealed.
Mm-hmm.
So people were writing, people were posting, people were calling, and that helped push lawmakers to get this law that was trying to be repealed for 8 years to be pushed in less than 2 weeks.
So Kevin,
yes,
to everyone out there who is upset now and think, oh, we're overdoing it, it's too much, enough. Those police, the 4 police are caught. I have a lot to say, but I want you to say it. What do we want to tell those people who think, the problem is solved now?
well, that's just one instance. Like, that doesn't solve everything. That's not the be all say all, because just like those police officers have been charged, many of them, I think all of them, are home on bail, at liberty on bail, after killing a man. And if that was a black man that killed the individual, he would be in jail with a bail so high it'd have been unattainable. It's the disparity when it comes to crimes committed by law enforcement or crimes committed by white people and black people in this nation. A lot of the laws are constructed to inflict harm to a majority of people of color, and you see it every day. And that's me saying it lightly. When it comes to the George Floyd case, yes, they murdered him. Yes, they did it on camera. And yes, they had no care for human life. But these things transpire every day. Only difference is it's being recorded and it's being put on platforms of the media so more people can see. Yes, the country's outraged, but how many young black males or females have suffered at the hands of corrupt law enforcement, corrupt correctional officers, or just bigot-based white people in our nation?
Mm-hmm.
This is historical. This happens every day. And not to mention some of the other crimes that transpire. And the problem is, until black people or people of color integrate into this system and change it from the inside out, we will continuously suffer from bigotry. We will continuously suffer from poverty and the blatant murder of black and brown people all across this nation.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just focus solely on one issue, because people die every day. Even after George Floyd, cops were still killing black males and females.
Exactly.
Black males and females are being hung from trees. They've been getting hung from trees over the past couple months, and they keep ruling them suicides.
Yeah.
This makes no sense. I don't know no black person that'll climb a tree, tie a noose, and fall from it. That don't even add up. But you got instances like this that get overlooked or downplayed in the media. But let a little white boy come up missing. Let a little white boy, something happen to him. Or let a dog or a cat end up dead or brutally murdered. Mm-hmm. It's going to be an outrage in our country. So the value and the worth put on black lives in this nation is limited. People don't care if we die. And it's obvious.
And that's why people will still need to exercise their rights, vote, protest, do everything you can in your power to make the change. If you cannot do it, nothing is going to be done, period. If you want to change, go for it, do it. I'm not sure if you can see this question, Nigel, from Amber.
And I can. What should we look for when reviewing our local police department policies that will help in combating these disparities and reducing institutional racism? So I think you can look at, when you hear a lot of people talk about policing, the black community is over-policed. So you would have police going out to a mental health check. and that goes awry and somebody ends up dead.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, like with Rashard Brooks, he was sleeping in the drive-thru, and he was compliant, and then that went left. So it's not the well, when you look into the policies, you could look into your local police department's use of force policy, when it's justified to use reasonable force. And if you look in it, a lot of these police departments is pretty low. Like, you can be suspected of a felony in some certain states, and force could be used, just being suspected of it. So you could look into use of force policies, just the proper protocols in policing, like those things that you can look into. And that police, like I always say, the criminal justice system, it starts from the first interaction with the police.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have an interaction with the police and it goes awry, then you can end up arrested. But if it's not, then that person isn't arrested, and that person isn't in the criminal justice system. Person doesn't have to fight for bail. That person doesn't have to fight for a speedy trial. So it all starts with that first interaction with the police.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the word, I think, using the word reasonable,
yes.
This shouldn't be allowed. You have to be specific, especially when we're dealing with people who don't have enough training in sensitivity. Some people come in or come on to this job bringing their own biases and prejudice, and we don't do vetting. We don't look into social media. And I keep saying this, and I know, I'm not going to be tired of saying it. A lot of people here, when they apply for a job, your employer look at your social media, they look at everything that you have done before, and they hire you or decide not to hire you based on that. We don't do this with police, and we don't teach them. We don't put them through extensive training orientation, just like what we do for our nurses, for example. I'm a nurse and I go 4 years. Why can't we do the same? And that's the question that we need to ask Amber, or anyone is asking, what can they do? Just get involved. And like Nigel said, find what the policy in your local police department. If you see that word, reasonable, question it. What do you say, Kevin?
Another big issue that I find with people and prosecutorial misconduct is this time bar. They got this time bar for anybody who goes to prison. They give you X amount of days or months to file an appeal if they were wrongly convicted or not. And in that time frame, if you don't file, well, basically you got to learn the law, have the ability to write up motions, pay for said motions and file them, and then have them in a timely fashion. And if you're not, you're time barred. So it's almost impossible to come back down on an appeal unless you have some form of new evidence. And this deprives people of their liberty when dealing with the courts. Yet, the district attorneys and the judges, they don't have no time bar. They can file anything they want. They can postpone a case as many times as they want, no matter what. And you just have to deal with that. They can exhaust whatever time frame they need and just ask for more time. But as the defendant, you don't get that same opportunity. And it's obvious that the whole system is geared to target, detain, prosecute, charge, and legally put blacks back into slavery under the Constitution in the 13th Amendment. When you look at Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania has 26 prisons.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why Pennsylvania has 26 prisons, because the industry that once used to be utilized here has become insufficient. There's no longer no coal mining and mining for iron and ore. Those technologies are they're not utilized no more. So what they did is found another way to generate revenue and economic stability.
Yeah.
So all these old coal mining towns and failing economies, they put prisons in them towns. Now, once you put them prisons in them towns, and they offer bed space from anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 inmates, you got to fill those prisons. So our legislators create policies that turn into laws for law enforcement to introduce into the community and to enforce and target people of color. It's no conspiracy. It's no um uh unavoidable fact that they target us to house us in prisons to generate $44,000 per year per inmate. The average young black male in America does not make $44,000 a year. They stand to make more off you by housing you in prison than they do letting you be at liberty to freedom. And this mechanism has been well thought out, planned, and utilized year after year, decade after decade, century after century to entrap and ensnare young black males into the prison system. They stopped funding our schools and they stopped funding juveniles programs that can help deter our children from a prison life. So now they created a block at Dauphin County Prison strictly for juveniles. You talking about kids in between the ages of 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even at the mature age to be introduced to that type of system.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, they're not thinking cognitively. Everything they do, every crime they commit is based off emotion and immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
So you put them on this block with all these adults. They're being influenced by all different types of people. And then you convict them because they're ignorant to the law. They don't know the law. They don't know how to fight for their rights. Half of them can't afford a lawyer. So you convict them after you brutalize them in that prison system. Then you send them to a state prison designed and built solely for juveniles, Pine Forest. And you put them in that prison which is full of violence, full of ignorance, full of gangs. And our children are at war every day. And then you let them back out into this society after they done suffer from PTSD and all different type of mechanisms of mental health,
torture.
And then you call them animals and you call them criminals after you tortured them for 5, 10, 15 years and release them back into society, and they can't function out here. Like,
and I think that's why an organization like Innocence Project is very important. And I urge everyone that is listening to us or watching to get involved. There is so many ways. I posted the link. You can go to their Facebook page, go to their website. You can donate if you cannot volunteer, if you can't do something in person. And I'll let Nigel talk about that. But before we get into this, what changes that we are looking for or you can do in the prison system, Nigel? What is the Innocence Project part of changing this, what you call it, treatment, if you have a part of that?
Well, we partnered with a lot of different social justice community organizations in the Close Rikers campaign. So Rikers Island is a notorious prison in New York City that was overcrowded, just old, and just it was just a breeding ground for violence and mistreatment. So we partnered with a number of community organizations in order to get Rikers closed and broken down into 5 smaller borough-based community prisons, because the issue there was everybody from all 5 boroughs in New York City would be at Rikers. So it doesn't matter if you have a court hearing in the Bronx or in Staten Island, you have to go from Rikers to your court, your local court. So that hurt our speedy trial. So people were being held on Rikers, which is only supposed to be not supposed to house anybody for more than a year or a day. They were being housed for over 3 years. Like, unfortunately, the Khalif Browder case. Yeah. He was in prison for stealing a book bag. He was in Rikers Island for 3 years. And he was never, his trial was not speedy. And the atrocities that he faced in Rikers Island, unfortunately, led to him committing suicide once he was released. So on that end, we help. We try to help with closing Rikers and other in prison reforms.
Okay, and if you're not familiar with Khalil's story, you can look it up. You can go on the Innocent Project. I think you have in your YouTube channel.
Yes, Khalif Browder. Yes, they have.
And this is just one story. I mean, if you don't sharing few other stories in general, so people know This is not just a movie. This is not a TV show that you're watching. This is real people's lives, and
Oh
they're
yeah, definitely. So yeah, Khalif Browder is one. They exonerated 5. Most of them served all of their prison sentence and were exonerated a decade after they got out. These were um, these were young gentlemen who were actually like forced to actually point the finger at each other in hopes of getting released, and they used their confessions against each other in order to put all of them in prison. It was just horrible. So there are countless other stories, and I see you have the YouTube pulled up with a few of our clients, and I think that is a great one to share.
Yeah,
I'll just
that's one of many stories, and I'm gonna again say, please visit the Innocence Project YouTube channel, or visit their Facebook and their page, and read the stories, so you can put faces to an incident, or when you think about wrongfully convicted or wrongful conviction, who are we talking about.
This is it. You still have it. This is like, wow, this is wow. Mr. Scheck, I'm confident that whenever the DNA test is done, it will show my innocence and this miscarriage of justice.
Yard's best of the best when it comes to DNA evidence. This is pretty much known throughout the country, and I desperately need your help.
Greetings, I'm James Howard Jr. I'm writing you this letter in sincere hope that you could be able to help me and my brother, Jonathan Barr, regain our freedom.
My name is Jonathan Barr, and I was wrongfully convicted of a murder and a rape of my friend Patricia Matthews, and I spent almost 20 years in prison for that crime.
I spent 15 years inside of prison. I spent 11 years and 3 months in prison.
20 years, 9 months, 5 days in prison for a crime I didn't commit.
The system failed us. Tremendously. It failed us.
What happened to this female is wrong, and the real rapist has confessed to attacking her alone.
They allowed the victim to be shown mugshots. All the mugshots was in black and white with the exception of my ID. She basically focused on my ID picture, and when she saw me in the lineup, within 5 minutes after being shown mugshots, she identified me as her attacker.
It was a bite mark on the victim, and the odontologist said that my teeth was the one that made this bite mark.
There was DNA evidence that excluded us from being, the donors of the semen that was found inside of Katrisa. But I guess because they had these ironclad statements from co-defendants in our case, they still proceeded. We were prosecuted and found guilty.
I gave up in prison several times. I don't know how many appeals I filed.
I had just got denied parole for the 5th time, and one of the counselors that was working there, he pulled me. He wasn't my counselor. He just pulled me to the side. He said, "Look," he said, "Marvin, there's an organization out there that may be able to help you."
I had a lot of support from the Innocence Project. They were very, very helpful. That day I heard about the DNA testing and I was excluded. I was overwhelmed with joy.
It was a great relief to be able to walk out of there a free man after 14 years. I'm able to spend time with my grandkids. I can hold them in my arms. I can take them to church, take them out to eat.
My mom was suffering from dementia and congestive heart failure. Despite of what her body was saying, her spirit was like, I can't die until my son gets out of prison. And she was able to see me completely exonerated on TV. And right after that, she died. She died at peace.
I wish my parents would have lived longer to see this, but I know in spirit they're here, and they will continue to be here for as long as I am here, and as long as my daughter is here. And if I am to have any more children, they will live through them. But I'm thankful to be home.
I can remember my first day coming home from prison. I sat up and watched the sun come up that morning, and you see the sunlight every morning rise in prison, but to actually feel it, as a free man outside of defenses, it was a totally different experience, The whole time watching him coming up and saying, I'm free. It was a totally different experience, truly free. And without this organization, a lot of men and women who are free now would not have been free. And I am one of those men. Women who are free now would not have been free. And I am one of those men.
This is just some of the stories that I don't even know what to say. This is not every story, and this is not even half of the stories that you guys dealt with. And it is just heartbreaking. It's reality, and I think everyone needs to hear and see this, and not just hear it and see it. Do something about it. And like I always say, if you are human and you see injustice, you see things like that happening, and you don't feel any type of way, and you don't feel like you want to do something to change it and make a difference, you need to check your humanity. You need to check who you are first. And now, I really don't know anything that we can add to this. I do want to thank both of you for putting the time into sharing your opinion and educating, and for everything that you are doing. And just few last words, if you have something that you want to share with everyone watching us, last words or encouragement or things that you want them to keep doing. Go ahead and start with you, Nigel.
Okay, so if you're interested and these stories moved you, just go to innocenceproject.org, sign up for our newsletter. We send action alerts every week for what you could do if there's any new policy agendas being pushed. You can be alerted to that, and just follow us on social media at Innocence on Twitter, and Innocence Project on Instagram. So yep, and that's all I have to say. And Black Lives Matter. That's all I have to say.
It does every day. And I will share the links to the Innocence Project, and I did share it earlier. I'll share it again. And Kevin, I know you have a lot to say, and you guys, I know people are asking questions that we can answer. I really hope we can have both of you back here again at some point, or I'll guide people where to follow you and listen to more. But we have to do something. And Kevin.
Well, July 11th, I'm actually hosting a Unity Festival, and it's my attempt at bringing the community together and have conversation, have dialogues, and find real resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
I also offered invitation to some officials so they can come and speak to the community and give them some definitive, actionable items to let them know what their plans is while in office to do for our community. Because at the end of the day, if you're not doing the right thing by Black lives in this nation, we will no longer support you. We will no longer vote for you, and you will no longer have our support anywhere around the board. It's time to put people in office who actually care about these issues that affect us. Because in this day and time, this should never be a reason where a man sits in jail 15 to 30 years for a crime he didn't commit solely because he's Black. And that's the bottom line. He's in jail because he's Black, not because he committed a crime. Because had it happened to anybody else, they would have freed him.
Exactly. You are absolutely right. And as educator, you both, are doing such a great job. And I hope everyone out there can be the voice for the voiceless. And we need to keep fighting for a change. And like I said earlier, until we see the equality that we deserve, we must continue fighting. And this system the system we just talked about, the system we just showed you videos about, it is not new. This system has been corrupted for over 400 years, and it wasn't meant to allow people of color to thrive in the first place. And if you want to know more, like I said, do your own research, educate yourself. We cannot give you everything, but we'll give you at least an idea. And you go look it up. Kevin, did I interrupt you? You were trying to say something.
No, I was actually agreeing with you. I was agreeing with you because you hit it right on the nose. The best thing we can do is pursue knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, because if you're ignorant, you're going to constantly be taken advantage of. If you educate yourself, then you can pull the veil from over your eyes and actually see what's going on with Black and brown people.
Exactly. And I do understand. And I know we both, when we're out there rallying, you hear a lot of harsh things. And that's not just for us, Black people who are fighting for our rights. That's also for our friends, for our white co-workers who are fighting side by side, who have to go home and talk to their grandma or grandfather who are going to give them hell for standing by Kevin's side or Nigel or my side. So I understand how it may be hard for someone who hasn't experienced racism to relate, but all we are asking is for you to listen and acknowledge our struggle.
Yes.
The first step of solving any problem is to recognize it and recognize the root of the issue. And again, we cannot deny that we all have some form of biases, like I said earlier. We all do, but we have to accept it and choose to educate ourselves to reduce the effect of the biases. Like, do something. If you do the opposite, if you just stand there and do nothing, you're basically agreeing with everything happening. And at the same time, if you're allowing your judgment and stereotype, and Nigel earlier talked about wrongful conviction, people who spend, like you saw, 20 years, 12 years in jail just because they look like someone. And that's stereotyping everyone. That's stereotyping. That's for you to see all Black people are the same, to see someone who's wearing a hat like Kevin or wearing a hoodie like my daughter or my son and assume automatically they are danger. This is a stereotyping. And our job is to educate. Our job is to talk about those issues. And your job is to do something about it and talk. And it doesn't matter if your family will agree or disagree with you. Make sure you talk to them. You're not going to change someone in one day, but if you keep hammering, when you see water breaking rocks, that's the change we're looking for. You got it. I truly appreciate all the comments, the questions, and even we didn't answer most of them. I'll ask Nigel and Kevin to review the comments and respond to those people if you want to. And you are both welcome to come and join us again, because an hour is not enough to discuss this matter. You guys agree?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well,
thank you, Nigel. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Well, thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And please go follow Kevin and follow his project. And I will share the event on July later, and I'll share the Innocence Project also. Yes. I'm going to go out with Miss Irene. She's going to be a guest on our show next Friday, alongside Brittany, a candidate for the Democratic Party. And she is a singer, and her song, No Justice, No Peace, is a powerful, powerful song. I will urge you guys to go on her YouTube channel and listen to her work also. Thank you very much, Nigel, and thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Black lives matter. I read Renee, Crown One. Tell me, girl. Don't matter if you black or white. You know wrong from right. Yes, you do. To stay silent is to be a part of the problem. Yeah. You can't keep ignoring the boiling hot now, pretending you don't know why things getting hot. Let's break this Or we won't settle down till we get our equal peace. Where there's no justice, don't you count on no peace.
No justice, no
Where there's no
peace.
justice, don't you count on no peace, baby.
No justice, no peace,
No
man.
justice, don't you count on no peace.
Yeah, no justice. It's all about peace, man.
Don't you count
Gotta
on
get
no
along.
peace.
No justice, no peace. Red horns on the shoulder, halo on the other. Do away with facets of colorless love, one another. Expectation provoking hurt for a sister or brother. Man, can't we all just get along? Riding the king, unity is strong and division is weak. And if we multiply the love, we add it to the family. Procrastinating action is needed. Maya Angelou once said, facts from fundamentals. Yeah, we all bleed red. Enough said. We ain't going nowhere.
This earth is here to share.
So, yeah, it's all about peace, man.
Here with me,
And me with you.
we won't settle down till we get our equal peace.
Yes.
Where there's no justice, don't you count on no peace.
No justice, no
Where there's no
peace.
justice, don't you count on no peace, baby.
No justice, no peace,
No
man.
justice, don't you count on no peace.
No justice, no peace,
No
man.
justice, don't you count on no peace.
No justice, no peace.
Yeah. It's a doggone shame. Oh, took me for Lucy, yeah. It's a doggone shame. Oh, and they got me down for a play gun. It's such a shame. Oh, for being the outspoken one. Oh, I'm not going nowhere. This earth is here to share. Either you're gonna get along,
Get along,
here with me,
and me with you.
or we won't settle down till we get our equal peace. Where there's no justice, don't you count on no peace. What's going
No
on?
justice, no
Where there's no
peace.
justice, don't you count on no peace, baby.
No justice, no peace,
No
man.
justice, don't you count on no peace.
No justice, no peace,
No
man.
justice, don't you count on no peace.
No justice, no peace.
If America does not respond creatively to the challenge to banish racism, some future historian will have to say that a great civilization died because it lacked the soul and commitment to make justice a reality for all men.
I'm not going nowhere. This earth is here to share. Either you're gonna get along, here with me, or we won't settle down till we get our equal peace. Equal peace, equal peace.
No justice, no peace, man. No justice, no peace, man. No justice, no peace, man. No justice, no peace.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.